Hello, students. You're welcome to today's lesson on characterization, a literary technique in African drama. That is, characterization in African drama. And we will be exploring two major plays to exemplify this. These are Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo and The Lion and the Jewel by Wole Soyinka, so that you can have a well-rounded understanding of characterization in drama and in the two plays as well, so that you can consequently excel excellently in whichever literature examination that you might be preparing for. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and stay tuned. I am Remeso Adeyemo from English with RMG, and this video is proudly brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. So, what is an African drama? Or what is drama in general? So, drama in general is a genre of literature which sets itself apart with the use of action and acting out on stage. However, it is just a genre of literature, just like poetry and prose. So, when we talk about literature in general, literature retells human experience. That is why we have the popular definition literature mirrors the society. It simply recounts human experience from different perspectives. So, now when we talk about drama as a genre of literature, what do we mean? Drama helps playwrights or authors in general to present their perspective to their audience in real time. That is, when plays are acted out on stage, the audience are able to experience the characters, the actions, the dialogues from the first person perspective. They could see it. If someone is evil, they could see it live. If someone is kind, they could see the action live. So when it comes to African drama are often used to expose the universe to African experience in general. It could expose the universe to African psychology, that is, how Africans think. It can also expose the universe to African experience, norms, and values. You see, when we talk about African drama, it is not a joke. It is not a play that you just think of and then you want to write. It is an intentional effort to show the world who Africans are, how Africans think, what are African experience, and that is why it is mostly written by Africans themselves so that they can tell their own story to the world. So it could also expose the world to African unique history. And when we talk about African history, colonial experience can never be eradicated from African experience or African history. Do you understand? So the plays also help playwrights to expose the universe to what happened to Africans when they were colonized and how did Africans react to it. It also exposed the world to African struggles and aspirations. Who are Africans? What are the things that cause conflicts in Africa, etc. So how do authors use characterization to portray all of these African experiences that I've mentioned earlier? How? First, let's learn what characterization itself is. So, what is characterization? Characterization is simply the way characters are developed and presented to the audience. So, before you can say this character is nice, you must have seen some traits in such character. Before you could say this character is wicked, you must have seen some traits in such character as well. So, whatever it is that the author has done for you to be able to come to a conclusion about a character is what is called characterization. Do you understand? However, there are two major types of characterization. These two major types are simply the direct characterization and the indirect characterization. So, what do I mean by direct and indirect? For direct characterization, the playwright explicitly describes the traits of the character. The playwright could tell you, oh, he is stingy, or oh, he is wicked, or oh, this particular character is this. The playwright is going to explicitly say it. But in indirect characterization, the playwright is not going to tell you anything. But from the attitudes, from the traits of the character, you will be the one to deduce that, oh, this character is actually wicked for plotting against the hero, or this character is actually wicked for killing someone who is probably a victim in the play. Do you understand? So that is where my that is what we mean by indirect characterization. That is, it is not explicitly stated that the character is this. But from the storyline, from the events, you will be able to deduce it yourself that, oh, this character has this particular trait, whether it is good or is bad. So now let's look at the functions of characterization. That is, how authors are able to use characterization to explore different African experience, psychology, history, etc. And in this video, I'm going to give you six major functions of characterization in African drama. So let's begin. First, to depict cultural identity and communal values. So in Africa, it is not just about individual. There are some values that they are community values, they are communal values. So first thing that you will notice about characterization in African drama is the description of the character. They are going to be black. Africans are black. This is our identity in Africa. So they are going to be black. If they are going to act it out on stage, it has to be black people. Do you understand? The second thing is the wears. They are to be wearing African attire, such as the flowing gown for the male and the iro and buba, the blouse and the wrapper for the female. Do you understand? So it has to be African attires. So all of this is already signaling that, oh, this is African culture, or this is African way of life. Also, we could see that Baraka's manipulation reflects traditional strategies to preserve authority and communal cohesion. Ordinarily, when Baraka tricked Sidi into marrying him, Sidi is supposed to refuse to marry him because Baraka manipulated her. But because of the structure of the African system, Sidi feels she has no value if she didn't get married to Baraka because she has already lost her virginity. So all of this is depicted to do what? To present to the universe Africans' unique identity, what it is that we value. We value bride price, we value virginity, we value elders' wisdom as well. Do you understand? So with the use of characterization, we could see the author's perspective. Also, in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagu, Madame Yoko was plotted against until she commits suicide, despite ruling with wisdom and consolidating power between the colonial rulers and her people. So, despite the fact that Madame Yoko is depicted as a good ruler, she is still not supported by our own people because the African society does not support a female leader. You would see that Lamboy and Musa kept plotting against her until she committed suicide. So this is just to show the world as well how Africans are averse to having a female in the leading position. So, with the use of characters like Yoko and characters like Baraka, the authors were able to depict what African values to their audience. Also, characterization can help authors to depict African struggles between tradition and modernity. So, there will always be struggles between African tradition and modernity. This is because there is a sharp contrast between tradition and modernity. What the traditional man is going to believe in is different from what a modern man is going to believe in. What a modern woman is going to believe in is different from what a traditional African woman is going to believe in. So there will always be what constant struggles. So Lapole in The Lion and the Jewel, for example, he went to school and adopt the kind of westernization, the kind of civilization, the kind of modernity that he sees there. Now he goes back to his own village, Ilujile, just without adapting it, without domesticating it. He wants Sidi to just accept whatever it is that he has brought from the city. However, eventually he lost because he didn't domesticate the modernity. He didn't domesticate the Western ideas of not paying bride price. He's interested in marrying Sidi, but is unwilling to pay the bride price. Sidi, on the other hand, is a traditional woman who values bride price. What if Lakunle was able to consolidate both modernity and tradition, by saying, okay, after marrying you, I'm going to make you a modern woman, but I'm also going to pay your bride price. Maybe Lakunle would have won. But because Lakunle has just given into only modernity, only Western ideology that he has not even fully immersed into. So eventually, he did what? He lost. He lost to Baraka, who is a traditional man, who is able to bring in his own traditional wisdom into the game of wooing Sidi. Also, in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo, Governor Rowe embodies colonial modernity and he humiliates Gbaya in public by asking him to kneel in the presence of his own people. This action consequently destabilizes indigenous power structures in the Mende Kingdom. And by saying the Mende Kingdom, we could actually say in the African leadership structure by extension. So this reflects the destructive impact of modernity on African traditions. If Governor Rowe were to respect tradition, he wouldn't have told Chief Baya to kneel before his own people. So, seeing that what authors are trying to portray is that Africans should learn to consolidate both Western ideologies and African beliefs. We are Africans, we have our own identity. And now, civilization has come to us through the colonial experience. How can we consolidate it in order for us to have the best of the tradition and the best of the modernity or the Western ideology that has come to us? So, if you embrace only modernity, you might have issue because you are originally African. And if you are conservative to your traditional ideas without embracing some bits of modern ideas, you might actually have problem coping with today's world. So it could be that this is what authors are trying to portray to the universe at large, and they're able to use different characters to portray this. Also, authors often use characterization to depict gender dynamics and power in African society. What it is that is expected of you as a male in an African society, what it is that is expected of you as a female in an African society. That is what we mean by gender dynamics. Now, for a character like Yoko challenges the patriarchal norm in the African society, where a woman is not expected to rule. However, Yoko joined the Poro cult and made lots of sacrifices by giving in her own fertility just for her to achieve her goal of ruling the Mende kingdom. Although she is eventually challenged by male conspirators Musa and Lamboy and the colonial forces, which leads to her suicide. This illustrates the double oppression faced by women in power, especially African women. Already, the society does not support them leading. And now they still have the colonial, or let's say the modern struggles to also battle with. Do you understand? So with the use of characters, if there is no character, what would we be talking about? So the author needs to build characters that can actually embody whatever it is that they are trying to depict. Okay, I want to show that some women have started challenging the patriarchal norm. So I need to build a character that will actually challenge the patriarchal norm so that my audience can see it from the first person perspective. Do you understand? So also CD gives into patriarchal norms by marrying Baraka. So CD is just like the opposite of Yoko, even though it is different place. Do you understand? Instead of CD to challenge the patriarchal norm by saying, okay, I've lost my virginity to this man who manipulated me. So what? I'll go on to marry whoever I want. But no, CD wants the bride price at all costs. So she gives in to marrying a man that she's not even in love with, a man that she despises because she said it in the play that Baraka is too old for him. She is young and beautiful, so she needs a young man. But because there's a structure that does not really allow her to make choices, especially with the part of the bride price. Without virginity, you cannot get your bride price, and City wants the bride price. Do you understand? So she gives in to the patriarchal norm. Lakule also is a character that challenges the patriarchal norms by promising City lots of modern woman lifestyle. He told Sidi that if Sidi should marry him, she wouldn't have to go to the stream to fetch water or go to the bush to fetch firewood. However, Sidi is unwilling to give in to Lakunle because Sidi wants a bride price regardless. So Sidi challenges Sidi gives in while Lakunle what challenges the patriarchal norm. Also, authors use characterization to depict symbolism and Africans' ritual. There are lots of symbols in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo and The Lion and the Jewel by Wole Soyinka. Also, can we really have a play about Africa without ritual? Without depicting the ritual that Africans often perform. So now, Baraka's staged impotence is a metaphor for tradition's ability to outwit modernity. Despite Lakunle's refined English, she could not win Sidi to himself. But Baraka, with what with his what manipulation, he was able to get Sidi to himself. So this is a symbolism depicted by Wole Soyinka to the audience that regardless of what you do, tradition will always resist the modern, whatever modern ideology that is coming. Traditional wisdom will always do what outsmart it. Perhaps that is what Wale Soyinka is trying to what depict to his audience. Are you following? Also, in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo, the Poro cult ritual symbolizes what? Spiritual and political authority in the African society. So when Madame Yoko was confused about the real killer of Geneva, what did she do? She goes into the Poro bush and seek clarity. So this is to show you the structure of rituals in African society. Also, before she could become the chief of Mende Kingdom, she was initiated into the what? Into the Boro court. So this is another what symbol of what African ritual, the type of rituals that Africans perform. Also, another important African experience that authors often use characterization to portray is colonial and post-colonial struggles. So this is a very important aspect of African's history or African experience. The colonial period will always be a time of significance in the history of what Africans. So now, Lakunle's mimicry of European ideals questions the alienation caused by colonialism. Baraka's victory over modernity subtly resists what Western cultural dominance. That is, despite the fact that Africans have been colonized and the fact that we have taken lots of ideologies from the colonial masters, tradition will always outwit what the Western ideas, the Western ideology. Do you understand? So it seems that this is what these authors are trying to portray, especially Wole Soyinka in The Lion and the Jewels. However, we could also say that if Africans could consolidate this experience by taking what is useful in the traditional ideology and take what is useful to them in the Western ideology, then they can actually what? We can actually have a middle ground without no more struggles. Also, in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo, Bayern's humiliation by Governor also depicts colonial brutality. By extension, modernity has no regards for African cultures and values. So it's still the same thing that if you want to bring in modern ideas alone without respecting the culture, we will continue to have the struggles between modernity and what tradition in Africa. But if you can consolidate it, if you can bring in, if Governor Rowe had respected tradition by not humiliating Governor Maya, maybe the Mende Kingdom structure wouldn't have what collapsed. So it is still about the ability to consolidate power, to consolidate the two ideologies. Do you understand? So now let's move on to the last characterization function, which is tragic heroism and sacrifice. I don't think there's any play without most of the plays, especially if it is a tragedy, will always have what a tragic hero. So Madame Yoko is a tragic figure whose sacrifices and leadership highlights the burden of leadership. Her eventual death symbolizes the collapse of traditional systems. So Madame Yoko is just the tragic hero in the play because she is able to consolidate power. She ruled with what? With wisdom. However, there is constant conflict, constant conspiracies against her until the community turned against her. The colonial governors turned against her, and eventually she died alone. Let me die alone. She died alone. So also, Sidi's sacrifices are what? Are youthful elegance, are fame, and are wishes to get married to someone young, just for her to do what? To fit in into the system, into the patriarchal system, by eventually getting married to who? To Baraka. So a lot of things has been said in this video that is not explicitly said in the play. And that is what you need to know as a student of literature. When you write about literature, do not retell the story. You should be talking from the analysis point of view. Whatever it is that you want to say, you say it, then you can now refer to the book, maybe an event that happened in the book, or you refer to a particular character for you to do what? To expatiate whatever it is that you are trying to say. I hope you understand this lesson. See you in the next video. Bye for now.